Bungie is doing a massive overhaul to the sandbox coming in Lightfall, and right now they've given us a bunch of different articles and information, and in today's video I want to go over all the exotics that I think you should make sure you have before Lightfall. First, I'm going to go over all of the must-haves. I'm going to go through every single season here, and then I'll go through notable mentions for each exotic. So first up, for must-haves, we have the Sleeper Simulant. This thing is going to be so good, it's not affected by the linear fusion rifle nerf. Those are two legendaries, so this thing will be a solid weapon choice. Most of you probably have it, but I figured I should mention that there. And I'll also mention that Outbreak Perfected is always a workhorse and very good to use. The ease of use is so nice for this, and we almost always find application for using this from time to time in raid encounters and elsewhere. Next up, we'll go over the Forsaken exotics. You're definitely going to want Izanagi's Burden, especially after the recent kinetic buff that's coming, so definitely snag that bad boy if you don't already have it. And the Anarchy is about to be back as well and be very, very strong with all the recent grenade launcher changes. Those would be the two must-haves from Forsaken exotics. Next up, in Shadowkeep, we've got Witherhoard. This is a must-have. Even after the recent nerfs that it got, this thing is just such a workhorse, always so good. Make sure you have that bad boy if you don't. And then lastly, we'll talk about the legendary down here, which will be the Salvager Salvo. Those would be the entire list of the must-haves. Those are like all S tier, really good. Salvo is always such a good grenade launcher to have because of the demo of Vorpal rolls that you can get on it, so you can just spam grenades and spam grenade launcher shots with that because of the demo roll, and it's really, really nice. So now that we got through the must-haves, we'll go through everything individually. Sturm, not that great. Mida, not that great. Rat King, not that great. Sleeper, obviously, we talked about, really good. Worldline, not too great. Polaris Lance is getting a buff and will be significantly better. Definitely noteworthy to talk about because I like the Polaris Lance, and in certain engagements, it'll be nice, especially with the solar language buff to that and everything with applying Scorch. The Whisper is not a meta option right now, but it's definitely noteworthy. Might want to grab the Whisper eventually. The Acreus has had its time, but overall, I don't really see it used, and I don't see any of the changes that Bungie's announced so far leading to anyone needing to get the Acreus, so probably pass on that. Moving on to the next exotics, we have the Ace of Spades, which is an excellent option for PvP. I didn't put it quite in the must-have category because I don't think it's like meta per se, but if you're using hand cannon, Ace is always an excellent option. Last Word is also a really good option, especially for controller users. Right now, sidearms are running rampant and kind of outplaying the Last Word, but Last Word is a decent option. And the Le Monarch is a really good option. I almost wanted to put it in the must-have category, but it's not quite there, so I won't, but it is a really good option for stunning overloads. I like the recent changes, and I think the Le Monarch is, especially when you have the overload bow mod that gives it increased damage, is a really nice, really strong option in Grandmasters and stuff like that. Next up, we have the Jotun. I hate this exotic, but it is very good in PvP, so a notable mention there is Nagi, like we already mentioned. Thorn gets a notable mention, pretty solid exotic. And Lumina is also really good. Its buff is actually underrated. This is an exotic that everyone probably should have, but it's not quite in the need of like a must-have category per se. The Truth, you can definitely pass on the Truth, unless the Truth gets some crazy buff, maybe. And then we've got the Bad Juju. You can pass on that right now. We already talked about the Anarchy as a must-have. Tarba is almost in the must-have category. It is so strong in the Crucible right now. Definitely fun to have. And then the Always On Time is the fastest Sparrow. It's bugged out and does a little bit more speed than the other Sparrows, so that's why most people will be rocking the Always On Time. Next up, we'll go to Shadowkeep exotics. The Leviathan's Breath is getting a huge buff. It's got like 30% more to champions. It's going to be able to stun 2 different champion types. I believe it's Unstoppable and Overload. And so the Leviathan's Breath is about to be insane with the most recent changes that are coming to it. Will it be meta though? I don't know. So that's why I can't quite put it in the must-have category. But all the changes that Bungie are pushing on the Leviathan's Breath look really good. So definitely look out for that in the future. Dariana's Vow was the meta for a while, but it got outclassed by the Arbalist for an anti-barrier exotic. It's not bad though, so I'll give it a notable mention. The Bastion is used in the Deepstone Crypt for the first encounter, so if there's an encounter where you don't have to shoot a crit in the new raid, perhaps this will actually be of some use. So a notable mention to that. The Symmetry, not really much to say about this, so I'll probably pass on that one. The Devil's Ruin is a lot of fun. I actually like this thing. It's not especially strong PvE or PvP, but it's not bad per se. And Tommy's Matchbook, probably pass on that one. Nothing to say about that. The Fourth Horseman is really good. Not quite must-have category, but definitely a good exotic. With the Horde, we already said, is a must-have. Ruinous Effigy is getting a buff, so that way when you pick up that Void Charge, it will actually suppress people now. But I don't think that change is going to make it somehow meta or extremely viable in PvP or PvE. So it'll be cool to suppress. I guess you could suppress people out of their supers if you want. So could be fun, but probably not a must-have. And the Traveler's Chosen is a nice exotic sidearm, but not quite in the must-have category. Definitely worth having them. Next up, we'll go over Beyond Light exotics. We've got the Duality Shotgun. Now this has the ability to fire pellets and slugs, which is nice, but doesn't make it especially strong at one or the other, so you could probably pass on that, but it's not too bad. The Tikus is a pretty strong bow. Not a must-have, but a pretty strong bow. And the Cryesthesia is really fun for freezing people in Crucible. I see a lot of people posting clips with this, but not nearly in the must-have category. The Lawrence Driver would be a must-have a few seasons ago when it was ridiculously OP, but it's nothing like it used to be after it got nerfed. The Aggro Scepter is very potent, and when you use the right build with this thing is a lot of fun and really strong. I would definitely recommend having this exotic, but it's not quite in the must-have category. Next up, we'll go over the Grand Overture. It is getting a small buff as well. Will it be a Grand Overture meta? I doubt it, but it will get a buff, and it could be better, so only the future will tell, but right now I would say probably don't need it. The Trespasser is a really strong sidearm. I see people use this in PvP and absolutely tear people apart with it, but not quite in the must-have category. And the Delicate Tomb, while it is fun, it is not a meta exotic. Next up, we have the Lightfall exotics. We got the Quicksilver Storm, and obviously there will be more here when Lightfall comes out. As we saw it right now, it looks to be pretty interesting, but we'll have to get to see what it looks like when it's shooting the strand and stuff, and see how much stronger it is at that point in time. Let's go over all the legendary gear. I'm going to skip over the stuff that's sunset because you don't need any of that. And Bungie did recently nerf the Revokers so that Reversal of Fortune is not nearly as good as it used to be. So you definitely don't need any of the sunset stuff. Felwinter's Lie has terrible handling. I would pass on this. You can find a lot of shotguns that have a lot better handling, like the Matador 64, for example. You can farm from the dungeon. Then you got the Adored, which is a decent sniper, but definitely not a must-have. It lacks handling, so pass on that. Salvo is a must-have. No Composure is a great fusion rifle with Reservoir Burst. There's a bunch of fusion rifles with Reservoir Burst now, and we don't see anyone really using this in PvE, and it's just average at best in PvP. I mean, fusion rifles are good, but this is just an average fusion rifle amongst all the fusion rifles out there. Next up, we'll talk about the Ascendancy rocket launcher rather, and it's not a meta role. Unfortunately, it doesn't have like auto-loading explosive. If it did, it would be awesome. So solid roll, but you know, you could obviously get a much better roll. There's a bunch of rockets that roll better perks than that one. Reckless Endangerment is a pretty average exotic, or average legendary shotgun rather. Its roll is not especially good in PvE or PvP. Chain of Command has got Adrenaline Junkie and Demo, which is a nice combination, but still not the best in either PvE or PvP. Even with the machine gun buffs, there'll be some better machine guns than this out there. And lastly, we do have the Cryo Mutiny, which is bugged right now, and Incandescent and Vorpal allow for infinite explosions. So I would grab this if I were you, but I would not say it's a must-have per se, because you'd be using a heavy grenade launcher for ad clear, which is not the usual MO for heavy grenade launchers. So keep that in mind. That's a wrap on this though. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my opinions on all of the exotics and legendaries in the Monument to the Lost Lights 2023. And make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. Smash the like button. See you in the next one. Later.